Good morning, guys. This is John. This is weird. There's nobody here. I'm talking at a camera by myself in my backyard. But we just wanted to get something together for you real quick so that we would have something to interact with on a Sunday morning. We're going to jump into a couple songs of worship that are inside of my house. And then we're going to come back out here for a quick message. Maybe 5-10 minutes of message. So stick around. We'll make it through it. I promise. And then we'll be emailing out announcements throughout the week and on our Instagram so that you guys know what we're up to, what we're coming up with, the different dumb, weird things we're doing. So we hope you'll join us. Jump on our YouTube chat. We're all up in there waiting to say hi to you guys and talking. So you guys know we are still on for small groups again on Wednesday through Zoom. So be on the lookout for the link for that. We had a ton of fun last week with both the high school and the junior high. So yeah, this is comfortable and it's fine.
Greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive. The empty cross, the empty grave. Life eternal, you have won the day. Celebrate, Jesus is alive. Oh, he's alive. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Whoa, whoa, forever I am changed. Whoa, whoa. When I stand in that place, free at last, meeting face to face, I know, Jesus, you are mine. To cross the empty grave, life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. Oh, I know he's alive. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Whoa, whoa, forever I am changed. Whoa, oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious way that you have saved me. And oh, what a glorious day, what a glorious day. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. And oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. And oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Whoa, whoa, forever I am changed. Whoa, whoa.
This is that awkward part. But the nice part is I can't hear you clapping awkwardly in your houses. It's a really nice change.
Atmosphere is changed. The evidence is all around. The Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. The atmosphere is changing now. For the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Oh, Spirit of God, fall fresh on us. We need your presence. Your kingdom come, your will be done here as in heaven. Overflow in this place. Fill our hearts with your love. Your love surrounds us. You're the reason we came to encounter your love. Your love surrounds us. A miracle can happen now. For the Spirit of the Lord is here. The evidence is all around that the Spirit of the Lord is here.
Hey guys, it's me again. You know me from before. Hey, so as we get into the word, I want to encourage you guys to grab a Bible if you don't have one, or pop it open on your phone if you're not watching this on your phone. If you don't have Bibles at home, we would get some to you, but we don't want to infect anybody. So figure that out, maybe Amazon, or ask your parents because they probably have Bibles. As we get into it this morning, we're going to be talking out of Genesis 17. So I'll give you guys a second to flip to that. But a little bit of background on what's going on in this story. We're dealing through Abraham a little bit. And this is actually a big piece of a sermon that I wanted to give for this Sunday for main service since I filmed it. But it just didn't fit with where I was going. It was something I wanted to talk about a little bit more, but it didn't really fit with my primary subject. So you guys are getting the part of the sermon that I didn't use that I actually really wanted to use primarily. So as we get into it, Genesis chapter 17, I hope you guys will open up. Hope you guys will follow along. If you're talking in the chat while I'm doing this, that's fine. You can call each other out for it. I don't mind, but it's okay at the same time. This is a whole weird interactive experience. So post your GIFs, post your emojis, who cares? I'm around, and I won't know as I'm recording this if you're doing that. So get into it, have a good time. Genesis 17, a little bit of background into where we're at. So Abraham has been given this promise by God, and he's been told that he will be the father of many nations. And Abraham's pretty old. He goes by Abram at this time. He's pretty old, and so he's not so sure about God. He and his wife Sarai at the time both kind of were unsure about what God had for them, and unsure of how God would make this happen, because at the time they were pretty old. They're even older when we jump into this piece of the story, but they ended up taking things into their own hands at one point, because they weren't having success, so to speak, with having the son that God promised them. And so Sarai, what she does is she takes her servant Hagar. I should have read the earlier parts again, but she takes her servant and says, Abram, just be with her, she'll give you a son, and that's how we'll have a son. And so they take this thing into their own hands. They're not waiting on God anymore. They're just trying for the end result of what God promised them, and they're pushing it for themselves. So we kind of jump into that. Ishmael is the name of the son who is born. And it's one of my favorite passages of scripture. I talked a little bit for the high school girls who were in our Girl Talk Wednesday that we had a couple weeks ago, the last small group that we had in person, where I sat in with the girls group and just dished that hot goss. It's something that for me is a big deal, and that I've dealt with a lot, is the concept of an Ishmael. And I want to get into why. But in Genesis chapter 17, in verse 15, it says, if I look down, it'll scream the microphone. God said to Abraham, as for Sarai your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name. I will bless her, and moreover, I will give you a son by her. I will bless her, and she shall become nations. Kings of peoples shall come from her. Then it says there in verse 17, then Abraham fell on his face and laughed and said to himself, shall a child be born to a man who is 100 years old? Shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear a child? This is a moment where it legitimately says Abraham laughed at God. It also says in another passage that Sarah laughed at God when they were told this, that they looked at what God said he would do and they laughed because they didn't understand how it could be possible. Right now we're in a very weird space. We're in this weird hunkered down quarantine, whatever you want to call it, from this COVID-19 pandemic. And we're sitting here wondering what's next. When is this going to be done? When is this going to be over? And there are times when we can look at the things that God has given us and laugh. And we can see the things that he has provided for us, and laugh at even having the thought that he is the one that provided that for us. Because sometimes we work so hard to get those things that we can't understand sometimes God's provision in that moment. And Abraham and Sarah have the same response. They say, there's no way you could do that. There's no way that you could bring us out of this and give us this gift and bring us back into this perfect world that you've wanted for us. They're on their way to the promised land that they were given, separate from when Moses then later on goes out to go back to the promised land. They don't even know what the promised land is. They just know that God said, go, and I'm going to show you where to go as we're going. So they're in this crazy space. They're in this moment, in this season of uncertainty, kind of like we are now. And they laugh at God saying he's going to take care of it because they can't quite see how that's going to work. But then in verse, again, over here, in verse 18, it says, and Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live before you. God said, no. But Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall call his name Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his offspring after him. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful and multiply him greatly. He shall father 12 princes, and I will make him into a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to you at this time next year. This is a weird moment, I think, for a lot of Christians to really deal with and parcel through, because we see Ishmael being shunned by God. And that's kind of tough to deal with because Ishmael didn't do anything wrong, right? Ishmael was just born. Ishmael just existed. It wasn't his fault that he was brought about by the wrong circumstances. And while God, yes, does punish Abraham by not using his blessing, what he does do is he does give Ishmael an army and a kingdom of his own. So Ishmael is not necessarily not blessed by God. It's a really weird space. It's a really confusing piece of scripture for a lot of people who then go on to read the New Testament and see that God is love and God is for everybody and God is rewarding. But that statement that Abraham makes there is one that for me has defined and really written a lot of my life. In verse 18, Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before you." I've had so many moments and spaces and things in my life that I've acquired, that I've set up, that I've built, that I have built on my own in order to try to reach some of the things that God said I could be, that I did nothing for involving God, that it was for me. That while I felt like I've been being led into these good things, it was me going and doing them in the way that I saw fit, not waiting on God. Abraham and Sarah don't wait on God to have Ishmael. They don't consult with God before that. They just hear that God says they can have a son, and so they go kind of have a son. I've been in relationships that were Ishmaels. This is something I explained to the girls group a little bit the other week. But I was in a relationship that I was pleading with God, that I set into place, and that I pushed through a lot of things, that I ignored some things, and had some really, really hard conversations with God saying, oh, that this relationship would stand before you, that this would be the right one, knowing that it wasn't the right thing, that it wasn't the right pairing, that it wasn't the right person, which is really hard. It's really hard to be in that place. And I fought with God, and I said, God, again, like as I would ask him to let that thing be from him or of him or for him, so many times I heard Abraham echoing in my head saying, oh, that this thing that I made without you would be what you want. And as we see in this passage, God says no. I think you guys might see that a lot in your own lives, even right now as you're figuring out or picking what you're doing. Some of you guys are looking at the colleges that you got accepted to, and you're saying, like, God, that this would be the right college. And hear me when I say that's not necessarily wrong. Because if you feel like God is leading you to that place, then you need to go, right? God calls Abram and Sarai out of the place they're in, and they go. They go to this new place. They go to this unknown world without a ton of guidance, just knowing that that's where they're supposed to be. But so often we build our own kingdom for ourselves, and we say, God, can this be enough? Can this be what you need from me? And God looks at those things and says, no. There may be things in your life like relationships or like some of the sports you guys are playing or something like that. I don't know what that might be ringing for you as you hear that kind of conversation. If there's anything specific for you guys that you're hearing out of that reflects in your own life. But if there is something like that, take that to God. You can ask for that thing to stand before him, but you have to listen for if he shows you that it's a no. You have to know, and sometimes you may already know that it's a no. And so you tend to ignore things, and that can really, really break down your relationship with God, because you start to ignore that alarm clock that goes off in your head when you start to think about it, and eventually that alarm clock sound in your head goes away because you get used to it. We have to resist that urge. We have to take these things to God. We have to say, God, how do you need me to bring about your kingdom, to bring about what you have for me? As we have all this extra time on our hands and we're at home, and it's so easy to get into the wrong things. It's so easy to fight against authority right now. You're at home with your parents all the time. It's easy to fight against the authority saying us to stay inside because you guys are young and so you feel like you won't get that sick. But it's important to show that we as Christians are responding well to this, that we are representing Jesus. Because hear me, staying inside is not going against the Bible. Staying inside and taking care of people is not against what the Word of God says. Not listening to authority that's not based on Jesus. There were moments in Jesus' life where he didn't necessarily obey authority, but that's because it disobeyed God's commands. That's the only difference. That's the only space that what you might perceive as an Ishmael can stand before God. I hope this week that we can take some time with all this free time to spend with God. It's so easy to just distract for 20 hours a day and then sleep 4. I don't know if you guys are like me. Like, it's so easy to just not worry about this whole God thing right now because you're home. You're not maybe worried about a lot of stuff. You don't need a lot of things because you have everything at home. The friend drama might have dimmed down a little bit, or it might have gone way up. I don't know. But it's so important right now to lean into who God is and what he has for us. What a good time we have. What a good space we have right now to really like recalibrate, to kind of reset, and figure out what it is God has and where he needs us to be. Right now, where he needs us to be is inside, I think. But when this is all over, what's next? How do we use the things that we're learning right now in this season to bless people and to show people who God is and to further our own relationship with God? I just want to encourage you guys this week, like, spend some time in prayer. You've got time. You've got so much time. It's not even funny. And yeah, I hope that something in this passage stands out to you. I hope something in this is relevant to where you are right now. Just know that we as your leaders are here for you, high school and junior high alike. So please reach out to us if you need help, if you need to talk, if you just need another person that's not your parents to just yell about whatever is going on. We're here. We want to be with you. We're excited to spend the next couple of weeks online with you, and we can't wait until that moment when we all get back together and like worship as a family and just hug each other and high five and punch in the arms and stuff, like to just have fun and play Smash Bros. Not online where the Wi-Fi gets kind of dicey, and I lose a lot more games on Wi-Fi, but that's its own thing. We are so excited to see you guys again. We can't wait for that moment. But until then, we know that God has a lot for us right now, not just at the church, but in your lives, in our lives. There's a lot to be learned from this season. So we hope that you guys will stick with us, that you will be excited about what we're doing, that you'll participate in the silly stuff like the Netflix parties and the talent shows and the goofy things. And that we can also dig into some serious stuff on Wednesday nights and Sunday mornings as we get into small groups and Sunday services, which we hope to continue to provide for you guys. So again, we love you guys. We're here for you guys. We can't wait to see you again in real life. Hope you guys have a great week. Be smart. Wash your hands. Don't be an idiot. Deuces.